Good morning, everybody. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Muhammad Tauhid from Union Harvest. We jointly organized this seminar with Vale, now known as Companhia Mineral Misque Mayo from Brazil. Since this is still in Hari Raya mood, so I also wish Selamat Hari Raya to everybody. Okay, we are indeed very grateful and pleased to welcome each and every one of you here who have kindly accepted our invitation for this half-day seminar. This gathering is sponsored by our company, Union Harvest and Berhad, together with formerly Vale International. As I said, now they are known as Companhia Mineral Misque Mayo. In fact, Companhia Mineral Misque Mayo is the subsidiary company of Vale, which is doing the Zaharah rock phosphate export to Malaysia and everywhere. I must also mention here the invaluable assistance, comments, and guidance from our colleagues in AR, particularly Mr. Poh Soon, Mr. Goh Kai Yu, Mr. Patrick Ng, who has helped us in organizing this seminar. A special welcome is extended to our main speaker, Dr. Chien, who came all the way from the US. Welcome, Dr. Chien, and who has kindly agreed to present us his paper on his works on agronomic use of phosphate rock. We are sure that Dr. Chien is happy to meet up with his counterparts and friends here after his last visit here about 13 years ago. That's what he told us. With 46 years of, again, I quote, search and research, and in phosphate rock, we are very sure Dr. Chien has tremendous experience and knowledge to share with us. For the next 3 hours or so, we will be presenting 4 papers, mainly on phosphate rock. We wish to thank the second speaker, Professor Dr. Zaharah A from UPM, who has kindly accepted our invitation to deliver the second paper on phosphorus for oil palm. With 40 years of research on soils, I'm sure Prof. Zaharah will be too happy to share with us on her vast works and knowledge on soil nutrients, especially on phosphate, as well as meeting fellow researchers and commercial sector, in the commercial sector. Our third speaker is from my former colleague in Felda, Mr. Suhaidi Hamzah, who is the Vice President of Felda Agriculture Services Berhad and FGV subsidiary company. I shared some experience with his team on working on the various PR, phosphate rock, especially in the immature oil palm in their field. Mr. Suhaidi will be presenting his paper on their assessment on the use of highly reactive phosphate rock for immature palms. Finally, the fourth paper on the use of reactive phosphate rock in oil palm and legume system to enhance sustainability will be delivered by Mr. Patrick Ng from the AR. What was initially planned to be a simple local event has now become a sort of international one. We welcome here Mr. Keynote and Ms. Ivy from Vale, Brazil. Mr. Keynote has been instrumental in making us the sole importer of BRP into Malaysia. We started this about 3 years ago, and we are happy that to date we have imported about 100,000 tons of BRP into the country. We also would like to welcome Dr. Rahman, former DG of IFA, who is currently attached to UPM. We also welcome our partners from Sumitomo, Tokyo, who are with us here. We also welcome delegates from Elma Group and PT Santana from Indonesia. We are organizing this seminar actually in 5 different venues. The main one is now here in KL today. Tomorrow we'll be traveling south to Johor, where we'll be having our seminar on Thursday. The whole of next week we'll be having in Sabah, namely in Tawau, Lahad Datu, and Sandakan. All in all, we are expecting about 350 participants to attend these 5 sessions. At the end of the day, we hope we would have created enough awareness and interest in highly reactive rock phosphate in all the participants attending this seminar. Now, before I hand over today's session to the chairman, I would like to give some info on today's event. The tea break outside will be there for up to 10 a.m., so those who miss the break may join later. And then the panel discussion and the presentation, paper presentation, panel discussion, and Q&A session will take us probably until 12:30 or 1. Then after that, we will adjourn to Manhattan Room 5 at the end of the block for our lunch. It is a set lunch, free sitting. And those who park at the basement parking, the hotel basement parking, the parking rate is 8 ringgit flat. Now, without much ado, I would now like to hand over the session to the session chairman, Mr. Poh Soon. But before that, I would like to have the pleasure to introduce him through his CV. Mr. Poh Soon graduated from the University of Malaya in 1967, and he obtained his master's in agriculture from the same university in 1976. His specialty of work was agronomy, nutritional studies and management of oil palm, cocoa, coconut plantations, research and plantation management and administration. His former and current jobs are as follows. Previously, he was agronomist and head of agriculture research, Highland Research Unit at Sharius near Mahat from 1967 to 86. He was head of agriculture research AAR from 1986 to 2000. He was plantation director, Peninsula Malaysia at IOI Corporation Berhad, whose responsibility was in oil palm and rubber plantation in Peninsula Malaysia, and its R&D centers in Sabah and Peninsula. That was from 2001 to 2003, and research consultant at AAR and plantation advisor at KLK Group since 2011. He was involved in many publications and journals. He was main author for 26 papers, co-author for 65 papers, and wrote 3 chapters of book. He edited or co-edited conference proceedings. The recent one is MOSTA, Best Practices Workshop, Agronomy and Crop Management. That was in 2005. His professional activities, society and awards. He served on many plantation industry committees, CIRIM, Ministry of Science Committee, MPOB Technical Program and Advisory Committees. He was president of Malaysian Society of Soil Science from 79 to 80. He was the convener, Malaysian Oil Palm Growers Council Agriculture Research Committee from 1988 to 1993. He was fellow of Malaysian Society of Soil Science, Malaysian Oil Scientists Technologies Association, and ISP. He is an independent company director for Kim Long Resources, Sendirian Mahat, from 2000 to 2001, and then 2006 to 2011. And he is the industry advisor for University Tuanku Abdul Rahman Plantation from 2013 to 2016. So without much ado, I would like to call Mr. Poh Soon to the chair, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this important meeting on high reactive rock phosphates, kindly organized for us by Mr. Wong Yu, Encik Muhammad Tauhid, Union Harvest, and Wale. I also have the double pleasure of meeting so many old friends and colleagues again in our agronomy, soil science, and planting fraternities, and also new friends, and especially our distinguished speakers for today, Dr. Norman Chien, Professor Zaharah, Encik Suhaidi, and Patrick Ng. We all know the importance of pea nutrition for our crops and the need for phosphate fertilizers on our highly weathered, acid, pea-deficient tropical soils, to make sure that we can obtain the best growth and yields possible. Now, in the old days, up to the 1970s, life was very simple. We only had to deal with one rock from Christmas Island. All we had to do as agronomists was to make sure that the rocks were finely ground and applied properly at the right rates to our crops. Unfortunately, then, like so many other things now, changes came in. The good, most soluble fractions of rock from Christmas Island ran out, and only less soluble fractions were available to us in our market. Entrepreneurial businessmen like Mr. Wong Yu saw opportunities and brought in Jordan rock phosphate from the Middle East, which later snowballed to include Egyptian, Moroccan, Togo, and the other rocks. And then in the 1970s, China opened up and cheap rock phosphates from there flooded in. Globalization had hit our shores, and as usual, caused great confusion initially. The cost-conscious practical planters and businessmen who were used to cheap Christmas Island rock phosphate applied pressure on the planters, on the agronomists and planters to use the cheapest rocks, irrespective of their properties, and it was compounded by the fact that commodity prices at that time were also low. Fortunately, however, many agronomists here in Malaysia had read of Dr. Chien's pioneering work on the chemistry, mineralogy, and solubility of rock phosphate for direct application to the crops. So our soil chemists here developed their understanding of the properties of the various rock phosphates using chemical and field tests, and separated out the more reactive and soluble rock phosphates from the rest. And using the information available, assess their value compared to the prices. Our agronomists showed their appreciation of the sciences and different properties that were emerged from the results, and the science, in the words of the climate scientists, appeared settled. And the choices made by the agronomists now for the cheapest, most effective rock phosphates from the Middle East appeared to be the norm again. But is the science actually settled, as many of us now ask the climate scientists? We shall hear about this from Dr. Chien himself. As you heard, he retired in 2006 from IFDC, where he did much of his pioneering research on rock phosphates. However, he's still willing to come all the way from the US to contribute to our knowledge of the latest developments in rock phosphate research. So maybe he feels that the science of choice of effective rock phosphate for direct application is not yet settled. Okay. In recent years again, we have had another major development here in the rock phosphate market. Wong Yu has introduced the Bayova highly reactive rock phosphate, all the way from Peru, right across the globe to our markets. Is it as effective or more effective than the rocks here now? Is this a right move, considering the distance and thus the higher costs? It has certainly made the rock phosphate here more interesting and competitive, which is good for us consumers, but is it also good for our crops and profits? Now, we have also here this morning Professor Zaharah from UPM as the project coordinator, and her research group, under the sponsorship of the World Phosphate Institute, INFOS, began their large evaluation program of the various rock phosphates in Malaysia in 2003. This multi-institutional research program encompassing the major plantation groups here, has revived an old, regretfully now too infrequent, tradition in the plantation industry of group research coming, major R&D groups coming together to cooperate and solve major questions and issues facing the industry. I'm therefore especially pleased that Professor Zaharah herself will lead the discussions here with her perspectives of pea nutrition and requirement in Malaysia. And we have 2 papers from this enforced research program, which will be presented here by Encik Suhaidi from Felda Agricultural Services and by Patrick Ng from AER. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are therefore very fortunate this morning to have a most comprehensive assembly of presentations covering the theoretical, physical, chemical, and laboratory studies, as well as the field evaluations of rock phosphates by this highly experienced expert panel of speakers whom Union, Harvest, and Wale have lined up for us this morning. So without further ado, please let us warmly welcome Dr. Norman Chien, our first speaker today, to the podium.